Hello, hey, welcome to the Mission Mediation podcast. We've been having a lot of fun in the green room, by the way, trying to figure out logistics. Happy International Women's Day. This is a very special podcast. Normally, I say welcome to the Mission Mediation podcast with me, your host, Jonathan. But as a surprise element today, I'm not going to be taking center stage. I'm going to be in the back end, and there's going to be six leading ladies speaking to you today on a very, very special message. We're talking about power and perception in mediation. I have the great privilege, of course, of hosting this fantastic podcast brought to you by The Pact, which is a mediation academy and an institutional mediation service provider now headquartered in Delhi. We've got some very exciting guests joining us, as I said, on this very special episode of the Mission Mediation podcast. This is, of course, episode 3 on season 2. So if you've missed out completely on season 1, the place to find that is on our YouTube channel. All you got to search for is Mission Mediation by Pact, and you'll see the entire first season. There's some exciting episodes. We talk about the role of a mediator, the role of a mediation lawyer. We've had some very interesting, I would say, insights from even folks in the judiciary. We've had international guests join us. So we get down to some very, very interesting subjects that really matter to the practitioners of mediation. And we've got 6 fantastic practitioners joining us today. And I'm dying to introduce you to them. But one more quick announcement. So if you have not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, all you got to do is go and subscribe that. The list that's going to happen is you're going to see my face once a fortnight on your mobile phone. That's it. But we don't really trouble you too much. So, but at least you'll get updates of future episodes. Follow us on LinkedIn. That way you can participate live in the podcast every time it happens. We have a live show happening almost every fortnight, if not every week. So yeah, that's pretty much from my side. Of course, as I said, feel free to join us. Feel free to get into, be participative in this experience. It's coming to you live on International Women's Day, and we've got some fantastic guests, as I said, joining us. So I'm going to quickly introduce you to them. Now, if I start reading out their resumes, we will need the next couple of hours. So I'm going to try my best to do this very briefly. All right. I want to start off by saying hello to Ms. Rukmini Menon, who's joining us all the way from Bangalore. She is an indirect tax expert, also has an expertise in commercial litigation and corporate advisory work. She, of course, is a seasoned mediator who spent nearly a decade at Camp Mediation Practice before, of course, moving on and founding now and a director at Settlewise now. So all the way from Bangalore, a big hello to Rukmini. We're now going to fly up north to Delhi as we have Ms. Pooja Anand, who's joining us, of course, from Delhi. She's, of course, an internationally accredited mediator with over 16 years of experience in the space as a mediator, of course, to add to over 30 years of legal practice in Canada and India, especially in the Supreme Court and the High Court of Delhi. So a big welcome, of course, to Pooja ma'am. We're now going to fly back south to Chennai, because we've got Ms. P. Kavita Balakrishnan, who's joining us. Of course, she's an advocate there, a mediator and an arbitrator. And Kavita, ma'am, of course, is a secretary of Mediators India, and of course, the founding trustee of Ambassadors of Mediation. Once again, 30 years of practice in the High Court of Madras. So a lot of experience coming to this panel today. We're going to fly back up north. I love this. We're going to get back to Delhi because we've got Ms. Pushp Gupta joining us, of course, on this panel as well. Over 30 years of experience and practice at the bar. Of course, practices at the Supreme Court of India. She is an MCPC trained mediator and also a trainer, an international mediator, and a founder of E-Mediation Writings. So if you've not got a copy of E-Mediation Writings yet, you should go check that out. And now we're going to fly west to Pune. We've got Ms. Suchi Nagpal, who's joining us, of course. She's a certified mediator and director of Settlewise Now, and the co-founder and chief operating officer, of course, of the Asian School of Cyber Law. And we're going to come back to Delhi because we've got our moderator and host joining us from Delhi. We have Ms. Soni Singh, of course, who's going to be hosting today's session and anchoring today's session. She, of course, is an advocate of the Supreme Court of India, a dispute resolution professional with expertise in intellectual property law, competition law, and corporate law, and of course, an internationally trained mediator. I think I did a pretty decent job in trying to really put this panel together. But Soni, Suchi, Rukmani, Pooja, Pushp, and Kavita, The stage is yours to celebrate women and, of course, to talk about power and perception in mediation. Over to you, Soni.
Thank you, Jonathan, uh, for giving me this opportunity to be hosting this very significant discussion with this very, very distinguished panel of women on this International Women's Day. I am completely delighted trying to host this. And forgive me if I make mistakes, I'm overwhelmed. So we will move on to the topic straight away. Power and perception in mediation. Power is inherent in every mediation. Mediation is often described as a neutral, party driven process. And yet, beneath the surface, we all know that there is continuous flow of power. It is between the parties, it is within organizations, and even between the parties and the mediator sometimes. So, power can manifest in many ways. Sometimes it is structural, arising from financial or strength or legal position. At other times, it may be relational, like shaped by influences or trust or institutional authority. Uh, and very often it is psychological, and we all know that it is sometimes visible in the way we speak, our confidence, the way we dress, and all those. So the ability to control the narrative that comes across, uh, and those psychological play of powers we have all seen in various mediations that we have attended and we have held. So, in commercial mediations, also we have seen institutional power, for example, arising from corporate hierarchy, government authority, or internal board dynamics. Similarly, in family mediations, power may emerge through emotional history or dependency. So, as mediators, part of our skill lies in recognizing these dynamics. And sometimes they are subtle, sometimes they are more visible, and understanding how they are going to shape the negotiation process. That straight away brings me to my first question. That is, how does power manifest in mediation, and how do you identify it in the room? The way I intend to go forward with this discussion is I'll invite each of you to please express your thoughts on each question. So for this question, may I please invite Pooja to begin?
Pooja, kindly begin.
Pooja, I think you're muted.
Please.
Yeah. So, Sony has asked me this first of all, thanks for having me here, Mission Mediation Impact. And what a wonderful evening to be sharing this space with my learned panelists, whom I personally also know. So, hello from my side also. So now Sony has asked me a very pertinent question, that how does power manifest in mediation and how do you identify it in the room? So I will go in the backward space. What is the role of a mediator when I enter the room as a mediator? So I enter with all positivity. And when I enter, my role is to try and facilitate the parties to come to some kind of a settlement. Now, that settlement is a structured process, yes, but in my mind, there is a self audit going on as a mediator, wherein the parties who come, they definitely will not be at the same, whether it is status, whether it's in the clothes, like if there's an employer employee kind of a dispute, in the language which is spoken by the employer. Maybe the employees are not so educated, and the employers, the management is assisted with a lawyer who's speaking jargon which is like not even making sense to the employees. So my role goes beyond the sphere of neutrality. My role is as an equalizer also. I cannot say that let them use the legal jargon. I have to maintain that stoic neutrality. No, my role is also to ensure that I equalize the effect, because it is not just about an objective perception. We also need to understand that how the power is perceived to be manifested. As you rightly pointed out, Sony, it can be manifested in many ways. Now, to if I were to just elaborate a bit more, as I said, that language. Now, there is this lawyer who's accompanied with the employees and employer and says in his legal jargon, which somewhere also masks the uncertainty of the court procedure and the outcome. But then to play the power, that is the perception of power, they might just say, oh, we will see what happens in the court. And there is another party who says that we're very comfortable to go back to the court. Very silently, very slowly, without raising voice. Now, amongst the two, the person who says whatever happens in the court is displaying a little weakness, and whereas the other party who says we are very comfortable to go back to the court and see, because language is one thing, because as a mediator, what is our use is not only active listening, but also to change, to reframe, and to put across those same points which are stated by the parties in a very neutral way. And by doing that, we can also make out that in this room, there's a lot of stress going on. There is a power display going on without there ever being so evident. There are silence, then there is a silence, which is also a very big tool. In a matrimonial case, there is an estranged couple. They're silent. Their parties are not speaking. That is not only a show of dominance. It can also be display of fear. What will happen? How do I proceed? So we have to, as mediators, my audit is to see whether it is a perceived display of power or an obvious objective power. We go further besides language, sometimes how you are dressed, how you move about. So it all depends on that. In the end, I will only say that emotions have to be composed. They are also a display of power. To manage perception is the role of the mediator, and to equalize also is the role of the mediator. So I would just like to hear what my other friends have to say. Thank you very much, Soni, for this very interesting question.
Thank you, Pooja. May I move to Rukmani straight away and have her thoughts, please?
Thank you, Soni. And as Pooja said, I'm also really glad and excited to be here, along with all my co-panelists and the moderator, who are all good friends. So, Pooja did give a very good explanation. So I have, seen power imbalance a lot in family mediations and in commercial mediations. Now, Soni, when you started, you'd drawn up some very interesting parameters. So, when you walk into the mediation room, or when you're already seated and the parties walk in, you can make out the way power imbalance is there just by the way people walk in. I mean, just some of them strut in, and look around as if, oh my God, and look down on the other person. And and they have a battery of counsels, and the other side is a small person who comes in, literally can see the fear, comes in and is sort of trying to not make himself or herself visible, and just with one lawyer. Now, when you see that, it's very important that you make you equalize this right from the beginning of the mediation and make sure that the parties are made comfortable. Because at the end of the day, what does the mediator do? Mediator helps it is up to the mediator to ensure that the parties trust the mediator and the process. Now, in this scenario, I've seen this happening with, I'll give you an example, a big corporate who has who's come up against a very small proprietorship firm, and the power imbalance, as I said, is very obvious. And till you make sure right in the beginning that they both are comfortable, or rather the smaller person is as comfortable, and making sure that you as a neutral are going to ensure that that person, the proprietor person, is going to be heard. So the different sort of power imbalance, as you said rightly, financial, very important, that I have all the money in the world and I can afford to go on with this litigation forever. And really, I mean, I don't care whether we settle in mediation or not. And you know from the brief that you received that the other side, the proprietor, is neck up in debt, wants to ensure that somehow or the other this gets settled so that you can go on with their work. You have legal imbalance in the sense, as I said, a battery of counsels, and the smaller one comes up with one junior who is looking more nervous than the client and who may not be very familiar with mediation. And so that, increases the nervousness of his or her client. Then is the total domination of the corporate, saying that I have the power to terminate the contract between us. And that is going to be big. It's a big time blow for you. For me, I'll find others like you. It doesn't make a difference. So beware. You are here, and literally that you are at my mercy. At times people make it very obvious. Then some councils are really aware of the latest decisions, some are not. So it is to ensure that all these, the bigger company, the smaller company, how much ever the power imbalance is, it's up to the mediator to ensure that everybody, both the parties, have a fair chance to talk about whatever they want to share with the mediator and go on with the mediation, irrespective of who it is. And with that, I think I'll wrap up. And I would still, I'd just like to emphasize on the point that in cases of power imbalance, while ensuring that your neutrality is not impacted, it is up to the mediator to ensure that both the parties are equally placed when they commence the mediation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rukmani. We will come to more of that, Rukmani, in our next part. For now, Pushp, can I have your views, please, on the question? How does power manifest in mediation, and how do you identify it in the room?
Thank you, Soni, for that very powerful topic today. And thanks to Jonathan and Pat for arranging this very relevant topic, because I think the way we conceive this topic is something which needs a lot of deliberation. My inputs would be to take it further from my friend Pooja and Rukmani. See, first of all, we have to understand that power in mediation should not be viewed as something negative. Why do we talk about imbalances only? The very foundation of mediation is self-determination. And that self-determination is the power in mediation. And if you don't give that power to parties, why would they choose mediation other than litigation and other platforms? So self-determination is the power. And why should we not see that in mediation? Parties, they strategize their participation and communication in mediation. There are a lot of layers and segments in mediation. Being a mediator in the process, we have to just differentiate between the power of the parties, their power to self-determine, their participation, sharing of information, hiding something, maybe strategizing the options, the body language they want to convey. They may sound aggressive, but maybe they are not otherwise aggressive internally. So it is their determination, and we have to respect that self determination. And we have to
Push, your mic went off.
is given a power. Am I audible?
For a moment, your mic went off. So
Yeah.
please repeat
Yeah.
the last sentence.
So the power in mediation to a mediator is with the consent of parties. And that power it comes with great responsibility. That responsibility is that we have to shift the spotlight on the parties, let them express the way they want to express themselves initially, because not all are versed with how to participate in mediation. It is only with the passage and handling and managing of the system, of the process by the mediator, that the parties then realize. Because, when we see mediation, it starts from positions to interest and needs. But how do they come to that? It is when we allow them to self determine their participation, their sharing of information. Only then we can have that stimuli in the process which gives them the permission to change their perspective. Perceptions comes first. They enter with perception. The perception is that, okay, we have to participate in mediation by holding back certain things in our bag. We are not supposed to open up everything. But slowly, the moment we are able to conduct ourselves with that responsibility of neutral and impartial behavior, and neutral and impartial behavior has to be exhibited by us. And how do we do that? So there is whole paraphernalia of toolkit which we need to use. Like we have to go all 9 yards to complete the cycle. And it is not just one way of identifying. We have to be present in that moment. We have to be listening to them, not to what is said and unsaid. Sometimes, maybe if they are aggressive or something, that's okay, fair enough. By maintaining the ground rules of using parliamentary language, the parliamentary tone, we can allow them to express themselves. It is not that every time we have to see that if somebody is speaking up for themselves, it is negative. No, that is what the beauty of mediation. So if we have to perceive power in mediation, we have to change our mindset. That power which we always feel is coming from a superior to inferior, or from a political hierarchy to somebody in public, or from a corporate hierarchy to the people in the organization. No, the power in mediation does not have this hierarchy. But yes, if it is there visible on surface, like as Rukmini and Pooja have cited reasons, sometimes they are not legally equipped. The financial positions are weak. That brings those imbalances. And we are not short of tools and skills to utilize them and to bring that to balance that imbalance. We have lot of things with us. So I always feel that the power in mediation should be respected, should be given a full space, so that party can speak with candor. And then we can take it forward, how they change their perception and their perspective. That is what the journey of mediation is. If you come with the same attitude, you cannot solve the problem. A mediator makes them understand from their own emotional state to go to the emotional state space of the other side. But that is what, it's a whole chain through which a mediator establishes the power of the process, the power of the mediator in regulating and managing, and power of the parties to completely determine from day one till the day end. So I would just wrap up with this: power should be respected in mediation, and it's something which helps in unmolding lot of things which is actually required for mutual settlement. Thank you so much, Sony. Thank you.
Thank you, Push, for highlighting the control that the parties have in by way of self-determination, which is the power in their hands. Moving on straight away, Kavita, your thoughts, please, on this question. Kavita, your mic is muted. Yes, please.
Thank you for having me in this Mission Mediation podcast. It's a very interesting topic that we are just embarked on. The power, power is everywhere. Okay, we have to accept that. The power, the quantity of the power differs in different places. The power is basically the ability to control people or the events to help themselves or promote themselves to a situation, right? In mediation, it is displayed very clearly in the parties. The mediator can see them at many times. Most of the time, the parties will never show their power when they come sit in the mediation for the first time or during the session. Only when they feel they are threatened, or only when they feel their position is being disturbed, they will start imposing or showing their power. That is where we have to identify that. First sign will be their non-verbal communication. Their non-verbal communication is that all their body languages, their body will become stiff. They want to push, position themselves, bring themselves to the focus, and all that will happen. That itself will give the clue for us to, okay, this person is trying to give me some more information about this. Okay, then goes the way they put themselves forward in that particular situation. They become restless. Their psychological move is different. They go to a next level of saying they don't allow other party to speak. He or she may be supporting their own case, or the person who is trying to suppress them by their power. But still, they will not allow the other person to talk. And there are other situations where the mediator has to step in and then bring them to focus, to realign them to the discussions they are going into. So all these things, it is the basic skill of the mediator, where from it their toolkit they are going to use how to handle the parties, get them to the streamline them to the position and concentrate where they are doing and what they are doing. Okay, so empowering them is also a part of the duty of the mediator. One person is powerful, fine. That other person also, who is not that powerful, needs to be empowered or given an opportunity to express their views, their ideas, or whatever they want to communicate. So that is also very important, I think. Identifying it is the primary thing, and then moving forward is that how you handle it. But handle it is very, very delicately. It's a very, very fragile thing to handle, right? Even if the very appearance of the mediator, okay, might also bring in some kind of ideas to the parties that they are controlling them, their language, their tone. See, I live in a city where it is a multilingual people live here. Even in courts or hospitals or in public places, we see people will talk in different languages. Somehow we get accustomed to understand what they are trying to say. Okay, but we may not be able to communicate exactly in their own languages, in their own frequencies. But that doesn't mean we are suppressed. I hope I am able to convey that point. So
Thank you.
we are all here given that opportunity to face that every day and gain more experience on that. So that's how we move towards this mediation also. Thank you.
Thank you, Kavita. Straight away, Shuchi, your thoughts on this question. How does power manifest in mediation, and how do you identify it in the room?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sony. And thank you, Mission Mediation Podcast, as well as the PAC for having me. This is super exciting. Rukmini, Kavita, Pooja, Pushp, I love listening to your views. They're fantastic. So very quickly, I'm going to twist this a little bit. I'm a new mediator, relatively new mediator, and an old hand at business, and more to the point, a woman in business, right? Now imagine this situation where I'm sitting for a negotiation, trying to get a tie-up for my organization, And the person in front of me who has just walked in a little bit late, thank you so much, will turn around and say, ha, what's up, to theek hai? When will your sir come? And now I try to extrapolate that situation into a mediation, and you're suddenly wondering, how does a mediator even begin to identify a power imbalance between parties when the first instance that they face is probably a power imbalance for them, their own self? In terms of attitudes, clients can come in with a lot of different attitudes. Some can be smug, some can be certain of their power in technical jargon, in the size of their legal team, as Rukmani mentioned, in the sheer power of money that they have, or the institutional backing that they bring into the room, right? All of that can make a play. Now, I think it's a given that to assume that there is a power imbalance at play somewhere it's one has to assume it. And I think it can't possibly be said better. There's a Marathi saying, I'm not sure how many of you will understand it, but it's a Marathi saying. It says, Jasa dista tasa nasta, म्हणून जग भसतं. That basically means what it appears to be, it isn't really, and which is why the world gets fleeced, right? So the assumption is fine. Now, another thought that came to me when I was thinking about it would probably be, assuming a power imbalance, fine. How does a mediator then make sure that these assumptions are tested? Because you may actually be assuming a power imbalance where there may not be one in reality. So that is one thing. And when I have to identify an imbalance, I would probably say, if I hear a sentence like, or even see it in people's body language, like, I lose nothing if I do nothing. Now, I believe that if a party believes that, they already hold a significant amount of power in that negotiation. So it would be my belief that that a mediator's job is not to remove power. It is, as Pushp said, to empower the parties to help them own their own dispute and the resolution to it. That's where I would stand. I just wanted to bring in a slightly different perspective.
Thank you, Shuchi. And thank you, all the panelists. This is indeed a remarkable discussion on a simple question. I thought, how would 5 people say this, maybe the same things, but it is not the same things. And 2 very important things that have come out is that, yes, power does manifest in mediation. It emerges that it is really confined to only formal positions or legal rights. It manifests in simple things like clothes, like language, like the strut of a party or the retinue of lawyers that follow them, and it in commercial as well as personal situations. And then you have also highlighted that the skill of the mediator is not in trying to eliminate power, which is actually impossible, but understanding it and managing it and perhaps equalizing it so that it does not quiet the dialogue or disrupt the negotiation. Thank you very much. And that straight away, I think, takes me to the next question, is that, and we have already discussed this, that you have said that power imbalance emerges in every situation. So as neutral observers facilitating the conversation, are we just observing the process? Or can we guide the process? Can we be the guardian of the process, ensuring that the negotiation environment remains fair and constructive? And where does one draw the line between facilitation and intervention? So my next question to you is maybe carrying forward from the last one is, can you share an instance of power imbalance that you have encountered? Let's limit ourselves to one instance each, and in your mediation experience, and how you as a mediator navigated it. May I start with Rukmani, please?
Thank you, Sony. That's an interesting follow-up question. So I'll like to go back to where I talked about a big corporate and proprietorship. So this mediation I did during COVID. It was this big sports manufacturing company which had a franchisee, and they had sued them for recovery for goods supply. And the franchisee, though had been the franchisee for a long period of time, had not been able to pay for the goods supply. And they had filed a recovery suit in court. But because nothing was moving forward during COVID, they had come in for mediation. And I must say, this was everybody's first experience with an online mediation. So that made everybody extra, including me. I'm very bad with technology. So, I mean, I was extra nervous. Oh my God, what am I going to do? How do I figure out things, body language, etc., on the screen? And so the sports company was very clear that we know for sure that we have a winning case in court. But since there is nothing going on, we've come in for mediation. I mean, made it sound as if they're doing everybody a favor, including the mediator, that is me. I mean, we just come in and, we have nothing to lose. If the mediation fails, we can always go back to court because we know we're going to get a decree. So during the private session, the franchisee did admit that, I'm just not in a position to pay. But if they are willing to take about 70% of the total amount, give me some installments, and waive interest, I'll be very happy to settle. And I'd love to get back to them as a franchisee. So when this proposal was, only thing he said was, what is confidential is don't tell them how much I have sunk into this debt trap. So when back, they just laughed it off. They said, what is he even talking? It's a proprietorship. What's he even talking about? So what the tool I used was reality testing. I said, fine, you have all the money to win a case, you have all the time, but you realize that even if you get a decree for the entire amount, you get with interest with everything. How long would you take? They didn't have an answer. And what would you do with such a decree? Will you be able to execute this decree? So that foxed them and the council. I said, what do you think that after maybe 3-4 years, this man will still be in, this proprietor will be still there for you to execute your decree against him? So that got them worried. That was the only time I saw they were, oh my God, we never thought about this. So then they said, but, it's, reducing it to this amount, 75% without interest, our board would never agree. So it was, again, it was asked of them that, would you rather have a zero recovery after 6 or 7 years of court? And as against at least 75% you're getting in installments in 6 months' time. So, the best part is this reality testing made them realize that though they were the bigger company, ultimately they had to sort of agree to the terms. They did settle and settled with installments. And what I was extremely happy about was a couple of months later, I met the company's counsel in court, and he told me, you know what, they've re-established the relationship. He's back as a franchisee, and they're doing so well. It's because the mediation settled. So I was really, happy about the fact that they got back with each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Rukmani. That is indeed a very, very to the point answer and a very important instance. May I now move to Shuchi? Give us an instance that you faced of power play, and how did you manage it?
Absolutely. So very quickly coming to this case, so first off, I think the situations where the power imbalance is obvious, it becomes easier, I think, for the mediator to try to rebalance the process, right? But where I come from is a lot of fast track mediations, and you see disputes where the claim amount seems very small. So imagine a person whose claim amount seems to be, say, 10,000 rupees against a really large institution. And then you begin to wonder, realistically, what lawyer is this person going to hire for a claim of 10,000 rupees? And so, as often as not, they come in alone. There is a structural imbalance in that also. Now, so we've already discussed power, which is very obvious, power which sort of runs under as an undercurrent kind of a thing. Now then, there is the kind of power imbalance which basically gets thrown in your face like a surprise attack. And I faced this client where they turned around. I told them, I said, it has been informed to me that your claim amount is 10,000 rupees. And he turns around and he says, you really expect me to fight a court case for 10,000 rupees? So I said, yes, but that's the information that has come to me. He said, no, I've spent lakhs. And suddenly you're wondering, whoa, oh, is that the case? Now, again, he has basically gone out and he has pawned everything that he owned to pay the hospital bills. And now he's hoping to claim that amount from the insurance where he's been paying his premium. My instinct told me to fight the big bad corporation. Typical. My training helped me choose not to fight that fight. So in that instant, I had to decide now how do I take the space. So my first thing was I heard him out. And then I paused the process. I said, let me get back to them. Let me have a word with them also. And by that, I mean the other side. I slowed down the process, which I think made the time and space to try to manage that imbalance. When I took this back to the insurance company, yes, there was a little bit of a pushback. That pushback came from the confidence of, no, but he's not presented his papers. I said, so now that we are at the mediation table, do you believe that if those papers are properly presented, we could reconsider the case? And again, the pushback was such that they were confident in their ability to be able to deny that claim, right? And win it in court also. So to be able to make them understand that there is another option, I had to slow the entire process down. And I do believe that to some extent it helped to make the process move forward. There was, however, I have to admit this also, that case did not, end successfully, right? However, at least it created that space, and hence I've realized that just that one big deep breath and telling even yourself as a mediator to not instantly step into battle, that helps.
Thank you, Shuchi. That is indeed an important scenario again, where small causes case and arising from informational asymmetry to a certain extent. But Kavita, what are your thoughts? And please tell us an instance. How did you manage power play in one of your mediations?
Kavita, I think your mic is still muted.
Kavita, you are muted.
Yes, with reference to a mediation which I had recently done, it was a partition suit, but the parties were very interesting. One of them was an ex-diplomat, and his brother, who was just a school teacher, and a predeceased brother's wife with a small child in 8th standard or something in school, some schools. And there was one sister who had never had an opportunity to talk before her brother all her lifetime. So starting a communication itself is a huge, humongous task for me. Every time I just start a conversation, the answer will come spat from the diplomat. Okay, I was just trying to make a conversation with each one of them. Every time it will always fail because the answer comes from only from one person. So every time I need to take a break and tell him and remind him, and again I have to reframe my sentence so many times to make it in his own language, diplomatic language, to remind him, sir, please give him or her an opportunity. So that they can also convey whatever they want to convey. Finally, we can come to a conclusion. It's not the point where we are concluding it now. So every second was a power imbalance and controlling authority, which we can never just imagine about it. And it was a struggle always, but successfully, we are just going to conclude this with the settlement agreement. And one trump card I had was I just made him understand. After all these four shares is each of you are going to get only 600 square foot. Sir, you have done a lot of diplomatic work all over the globe, and you know what's the value of it. And above all, you know the value of your siblings. So please move forward with this thought. This thing caught his mind. I had to repeat this sentence whenever he moves out of that frame. So bring him back to that position. Yes, fine. Then he will. Then we will move towards his interest, saying that okay, it's only 600 square foot. We will divide. We will decide. One of us. We almost explored every choice, selling the entire plot to somebody else, or going for a JV, or buying up one share or two share by the other person. Every other alternative, getting a loan from somebody and doing something on their own constructions, everything was thrown in the wind. He will never accept, because he had decided, he had with his own connections, he said, like, this property is going to fetch me so much, so I'm not going to allow anybody to make any other decisions. But finally, when he came to know he can have a right only with respect to his 600, and with that 600 he cannot sell it alone without the help of others, their signature, he knew where the ground was. That's it. This is one of the most interesting which I've been doing it for the past few weeks.
Thank you, Kavita. That is indeed interesting. Partition between a diplomat and a teacher. So it's an instance of relational and psychological play of power. And reminding the parties what they are fighting for was your tool, moving them away from power play. Thank you, Kavita. Now I move on to Push and request her to share her instance.
So, thank you, Sony, once again. I think my friends have already shared very great examples, which can give us an insight as to how a mediator with patience can really go into the zone where they can subtly handle that power display. As Suchi has rightly said, that we have to check the assumptions which are behind the display of power. That is very important, and we can do that only when we don't have prepossessions of our own perceptions and biases and prejudices. If we are going to diagnose power in imbalance with those lenses, then it's not right. We are not doing the right job. And then, if I love the word of the topic which said that we are process guardians. Yes, we are guardians because lot of responsibilities there on our shoulders, because many time when we give our opening statement, we say that we are not supposed to give you solutions, we will not give you advice, we are not going to take sides, we'll be neutral. So sometimes parties feel, what will you do then? But it's very difficult to be on this chair wherein a person himself is a human being who has its own background. With that switch off, you have to be with parties in their shoes and have to understand the way they want to make you understand they are displaying something. Sometimes the display is genuine, or sometimes maybe it leads to an imbalance. So I take example, usually I take more of matrimonial matters in mediation, whether in Supreme Court or in High Court. So more of the matters on table are matrimonial. So in this matter, which is still right now going on before me, and it will take another week or maybe 2 weeks, 2 dates to finally lead to a situation wherein they can think of a mutual solution, but I can see that's coming near to that. So the husband in this, he's working in one MNC, and wife, she is a homemaker. They both separated after a few years of their relationship, So they have two children from this wedlock. Both of them are with mother. So the husband, he's working in MNC, but not on a higher post, but he is a security guard there. Okay. So being a security guard in MNC, he has a stable income. He comes from a family which has a good financial standing in terms of assets, maybe assets in the shape of the house in the name of father and one agricultural plot. And there are two brothers. So these there were certain other facts which I came up with when a party shared, and made a mental note also of some of the facts, and then we moved on. But the wife started, they agreed that we are going to want this mediation only for mutual separation. So I respected their decision. I did not force them to sit for reconciliation. So I worked further on for this mutual separation. While this was going on, the wife gave some figure for herself and for two children. However, the figure which was coming from husband was just minuscule of what she was expecting. There was a huge gap, you know. It was not sounding appealable, though I'm not supposed to be judgmental, but then I felt my task is going to be little heavy. You know, I cannot be having this mediation see settlement happening so soon. So at after some time, so I was trying to take them to the what exactly the requirement of children, in which class they are, what are the requirements, what are the future prospects, what is he looking for in job profile and all. But however, he came to a figure which was still far away from what she was expecting. And this led to, because you know, in India we have 90 days of time to have a matter before us to be mediated. After that we have to send it back to the referral court. So I'm talking about court and ex mediation. So that clock was ticking on my head also. So finally, one fine day, when nothing was being closed, you know, the gap was still visible, the husband one fine day said, okay, I have no problem to continue with litigation. I have enough money to afford lawyers. I'm not going to lose anything. So this was not simple statement, but this was with high vocal cords. So it displayed an extra power in that statement. So which was, I felt that here now it is something which needs to be checked. There in itself, you know, because the moment he gave that statement, I could read from the wife's body language and expression that she's not at ease. There is a display of fear on her face. Maybe that fear might take her to agree for an amount which may not satisfy her needs. And I did not want that also. So immediately I reframed this. I said, it seems litigation is the viable option for you and maybe for two of you. But since you both have consented for mediation, let us still try to work for some mutual solution. So I reframed that sentence to bring back the positivity, because there was a weaker financial party and there was one party who was financially stronger. He was not otherwise stronger. He was financially stronger to afford the litigation cost. He could not afford that package which wife was expecting. So what I did, I switched them to the caucus session. I then took out the tool of questionnaire, various effective questions, you know, wherein they were focused on asking the husband as to how litigation is going to serve your child's welfare, if it is going to be for a few more years, how, whether it will have an impact on your family reputation, because his father was also participating. So this caucus was not just with him but with his father also, because by then I have already gathered an information about the strength of the family also, that every time family members are coming, so it's not going to happen from his pocket, it will be a contribution from father. I knew that, but since it's not coming directly, so when I made him, you know, discuss with me as to how he's going to be at loss if he continues with litigation, even if he satisfies that he's not giving to I, but ultimately he'll be the loser. That caucus session with him gave the power, you know, immediate shift in the power from a somebody who is financially dominant to somebody who is not now focusing on solving the problem for himself, not for his wife. But then he said that I need to solve problem for myself because it's going to disrepute my family. my child's welfare is definitely going to be jeopardized. So I reframe the situation and bring them back into that zone wherein the intensity of power display was dispelled to some extent. So then when I gave this, it was like an homework to him. I said, you please concentrate on this and I give you a date. Please come back with an answer on this. And if you're able to search for an answer which makes a balance sheet of what you're going to get now in mediation and what you're going to get outside, if that balance sheet permits you still to continue with litigation, it's entirely your decision. So next time, similarly, I took a caucus session with wife, that how much settling in mediation means to her, because she was not financially stable. So the balance sheet for her is spending on finances would ultimately be again a hole in her pocket. So that we always have to make a balance sheet of plus and minuses. When you weigh them, then parties, then they switch from attacking, from dominance to a conversation, to a dialogue for mutual problem solving. So reading their body language helped me, using questioning techniques, using single caucus session, and then reframing the situation with only with the mindset that I'm a process guardian, wherein I have to be a subtle balancer. I cannot force, but I have to be a subtle balancer, and with fairness, an egalitarian system it is. So, this is how I moved in. And I know when on last Wednesday they were before me. So he was quite near to her uh, ask, which was her need. So maybe in next one or two sittings, I'm able to dispel that further, and then they will look into this, because ultimately, once you do that reality testing with them as to what they're going to get outside, whether that's affordable, and emotional cost of that. Financial is okay, but what about the emotional cost? The balance sheet is not about the numerics, it about the emotional cost it's going to cost them outside. So once you give them this, because lawyers don't tune them for this, they tune them with the numerical cost, but not the emotional cost which goes in. So this is the task of a mediator, and we are skilled. I think we are equipped with plenty of things, skills to take care of power imbalances, and it's the party's decision, despite that, if it is not happening. So maybe next time. Thank you so much, Sony. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Push. This is actually like we all see these matrimonial cases very often, and balancing of financial power with the emotional losses that may occur. That's a very important instance that you have shared with us. Pooja, moving on to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sony. And you've made my task very easy by calling me in the end, because all my learner friends have already said whatever I had to. So let me just wrap it up by saying that managing power imbalance, is the role of a mediator. As a mediator, as I said, that I need to audit my own self. So as a facilitator, I have to create an atmosphere wherein, even if I can see a perceived power imbalance, I have to create that safe environment where both the parties can open up equally. They can share their whatever is the dispute or what they have in their mind in the joint as well as caucus sessions. And then we come to some kind of settlement, which is not like, under duress. It cannot be under some kind of a compulsion. It has to be by free will, because otherwise mediation will lose its importance and why it is there. So coming to that question, for an instance, so I will, like my own friend here, Push, give a case which is a matrimonial dispute which came before me. It was a court annexed mediation. Now, going into the background, it's a very interesting case which I'll have to just cut short because of paucity of time. So there was this estranged couple, and they have a daughter, and they hadn't spoken to each other over more than 3.5 years. And it was a love marriage wherein the girl belonged to an affluent family and the boy was like lower middle. But he had worked up his way and come up well in life, and he was working hard. Now we come to the power imbalance. The perceived power imbalance was within their family, not between the couple. The father of both sides did not want the marriage to work. So they were not letting their children speak. And they said that I could make out that the father said, no, no, you just proceed with the divorce things. We only want mutual consent divorce. We don't want money. We can afford to keep her. And I could see that there was some kind of a silence between the main parties. So very politely, I had to request for both the fathers to step out. And when the parties were there in front of each other, they wouldn't converse. But the minute they were in caucus, both the parties would be yelling on top of their voice. And one day the girl went banging on the table, and she said, what do you have to say to that? I said, I don't have anything to say. I couldn't understand. I could only hear the yelling. I could not understand the context. Please sit down calmly. Tell me what is in your mind. And then I realized that there is a gap of communication created. So I got the parties together and I said, I'm sitting outside. This is a glass door. I'm not asking you to reunite. Please part ways, but just vent out your feelings of hatred so that when you start your life afresh, you do it with a clean slate. Don't go back like we divorced and this is what was left. I should have said that when I had the opportunity. So long as you don't hit each other, I'm good with it. And since then, actually what happened is mediation became a dating ground for them. The couple used to say, can we come tomorrow? I said, no, I'm busy. No, we'll just sit in the room. And I'm talking about 5-6 years ago. So that time we still used to have availability of rooms. I said, no, still, I need to be present in the mediation center. So you go outside and meet. So you tell at home whatever you want to. So anyways, they got back together. And after 1.5 years of closing up their matter, suddenly I get a call, and as mediators, our numbers are not shared, but maybe center had shared. And they called up to inform me that they've been blessed with a son, and they have named him Anand. Said when our whole family was out to get us divorced, you saw in us that light that our love could bloom, because I reminded them of the good times. And now that the husband's also very well off, he's done well for himself, maybe not coming from that affluent background as yours, but whatever are your needs and desires can be met with, and your children, so anyways, they got back together. No client under the sun will name their child after a lawyer. But imagine the beauty of mediation. They named the child Anand, and I laughingly said, and what if you'd been blessed with a daughter? He said, we had thought we'll name her Pooja. I said, don't do that. don't, think about me all the time. Just put this as a bad chapter and have a wonderful life ahead. So, I mean, that was what I had to share, because my other friends have already shared. Otherwise, over more than 16, 17 years, there are so many matters which come to the mind that I can go on and on with the number of incidents. So these bring a smile and a sense of satisfaction, not only to the parties. I feel as a person, I have changed. My perceptions have changed. And as a lawyer also, I deal with parties better, because mediation somehow should be awareness should be done for everybody, whoever is in this profession or generally, because you don't feel like fighting only. You feel it's so futile. When we can sort it out, why fight? Why raise voice? Some things, they internally, you start imbibing, and then they become part of the system with you. So that is all I have to say. If
Thank
there is
you.
time, if there were time, I would give one more incident. But since I don't know if we have the time, there was one interesting incident in Supreme Court, wherein one of my lawyer colleagues, he stopped me and he said, you have to treat me to coffee. So I said, why? I mean, I'm known for uniting people more than separating them in matrimonial cases. So that couple also got back together, and then he was saying that the family was praising me. Now they have a child and all. So all those things are really good.
These are
Thank you. Thank you,
definitely
Sony.
remarkable and very encouraging, very remarkable and very encouraging stories, Pooja. Thank you for sharing them here. And they're definitely, they help us take this session to a very positive, ending on a very positive note. And despite this very heavy topic of power and how it is being perceived, and we saw examples from commercial mediation and from commercial examples from matrimonial, from family situations, and very difficult situations that have been navigated. And they highlight something very important about mediation. The mediator's responsibility is not to equalize the outcomes, but to protect the integrity of the process. We see from your instances that managing power imbalance often involves small but thoughtful interventions, such as just structuring the conversation carefully, giving each party the space to speak, clarifying information, or using caucus, sharing BATNA and reality checks, and reframing situations to create more balanced negotiation environment. So in many ways, mediator's role of a process architect is highlighted in your stories. And thank you for sharing them. Absolutely. These are, I'm sure all the panelists, we have all enjoyed listening to each other's stories. And so we will bring this to a close here. And as we conclude this discussion of power and perception in mediation, may I request Pooja to mute, please? Sorry, there's some disturbance, but I'll proceed. So as we conclude this discussion on power and perception in mediation, it is clear that mediation is not simply about facilitating conversation. It is about understanding the human and the structural dynamics that shape the discussions and the negotiation. So this discussion brings forth the aspect of mediation that power may be present. It is present. We see that it is present in many forms, in structural, relational, and psychological forms, in all situations and in all negotiations. And perception influences how the power is interpreted. But the mediator role is crucial. It is to create a process in which dialogue remains possible despite those dynamics. For those of us who practice mediation, this reminds us that the craft lies not only in the techniques, but also in awareness, in presence, in thoughtful process design, in creating the safe space for all to be able to express. So many thanks once again to all our panelists for sharing their experiences. And thank you to the audience for being part of this conversation.